Hi everyone, I'm Shaylin here with Readsy. So today I'm going to be talking about 6 signs that your book is ready to query and 6 signs that it's not. If you've been working on editing your book, getting ready to start querying it, one question that may be floating around your mind is, how do I know when my book is ready to query? How do I know when I've done enough edits? It's very competitive for querying authors out there right now. So you do want your manuscript to be the highest quality that you can make it. But if you've never written or thoroughly edited a book before, you may not know what that looks like. So here are 6 signs that your book is ready to query and 6 signs that it may not be ready yet. So let's start by talking about some signs that your book is ready to query. Number 1, you're getting consistent positive feedback from a variety of sources. It can be really hard to objectively look at your own work. In fact, it's probably impossible, not just because it's yours and you care about it and you love it, but because you have so much background knowledge about the work. You're never going to be able to read it the way a reader would for the first time without any existing knowledge about the story. Something that might make total sense to you and be crystal clear might be really confusing to a reader because you know, but they don't. That's why getting feedback from a variety of people is so helpful. There are lots of different ways to get feedback on your manuscript, from critique partners, beta readers, writing workshops, or professional editors. You should be getting feedback from a variety of people, and it's a really good sign when you're getting consistent positive feedback across the board. Number 2, you know what you want to say with the story. If you can clearly articulate what it is you want the story to say on the level of character and theme, that's a really good sign that your book is really well polished and really well developed. The more work you do on a manuscript, the clearer your vision for it will become. You'll know what it is you want the book to say, and you'll feel like the book is actually saying that thing. Being able to clearly explain and articulate the nuances of your book's theme and character arc is a great sign that you've put a lot of work into the manuscript and that it's in a really late stage of development. Sign number 3, you've done multiple rounds of editing across different levels of the story. I can tell you right now that if you just came out of the first draft or you've only done some light editing, the book is not ready to query yet. In order to get a book ready to query, you should be doing multiple rounds of editing in different ways. So that means edits to plot and character, macro edits to the story, as well as micro edits to the line level and refining things like word choice and sentence structure. Every level of your story probably is going to take multiple rounds of editing to refine it. The exact amount of edits that your book needs completely depends on your writing process and the book itself, but I can pretty much tell you with absolute confidence that it's going to take more than just a light edit to get a first draft to the point that it's ready to query. Different books and different authors will need to concentrate their edits in different places, but it's almost a guarantee that you will need to do editing to both the macro elements of a story, so the characters, the plot, the structure, the pacing, and even things like the themes, as well as the micro aspects, so the word choice and the sentence level. Focusing your edits on just one of these things, so just doing a bunch of line edits or just refining the macro elements of your story, isn't enough to get it ready to query. It needs to be really polished on both a story level and a line level. Sign number 4 is that your book is an appropriate word count for the genre. A lot of first-time writers who are unagented and unpublished like to think that they are going to be the exception to the rule of word counts, but the truth is that publishing does have genre standards for word counts, and while there certainly are books that fall outside of that range, you don't want to count on being one of those exceptions as a querying author. Know the appropriate and expected word count range for your genre and do your best to stay within it. If you're writing a thriller but your book is 150,000 words long, that is likely a sign that the pacing is too long, too baggy, and too slow for the genre. Word count standards may seem restrictive to a lot of writers, but a lot of the time they are indicative of what a book needs to be successful. The reason genres like horror and thriller often have shorter word counts is because it's expected that in those genres you're going to have tighter, snappier plots that keep the reader on the edge of their seat. Really long word counts that draw the story out don't equate to that. On the other hand, that's why genres like historical fiction, fantasy, or epic sci-fi have longer word counts. It's expected that these books may be a little slower because they have a lot more world building. So not only is it important to be within the word count range for your genre, for practicality's sake, because being outside it is really going to decrease your chances of landing with an agent because you're outside industry standards and industry norms, it is also actually a really good indicator of whether your book is appropriately paced and well edited for its genre. Sign number 5. When you read the book over, you hardly make any changes. As writers, it's pretty natural that as you read a book over, you will just naturally make edits, especially smaller edits, to the line. But if you've really done your due diligence in editing your manuscript thoroughly, it's possible that you're at the stage where as you read the book over, you don't really make any changes. You're happy with everything, and the story and the word choice flows naturally. This is, for me, a really good indicator that I have gotten a piece to the polished stage, because I'm not just naturally editing it, stopping to make a ton of little edits as I read it over. Personally, I actually think that this can be a really good kind of litmus test for whether your book is well edited on the line level. Read it over, and if you don't really make any changes, if nothing jumps out to you as needing to be changed, that probably means it's quite polished, especially compared to earlier drafts where you were maybe doing a ton of edits. And finally, sign number 6, you feel like you've done all the editing that you can. It is very competitive right now for querying authors. So you want your book to be as polished as possible, and that means doing all the editing that you can. But maybe you feel that you have done all the editing that you can. That's a great sign that you've really put in a ton of work and the book might be ready to query. On its own, just feeling like you've done all the editing that you can may not be enough. But if you personally feel you've done all the work you can, you're getting consistent positive feedback, you're in an appropriate word count range, and you feel like your vision for the book is really clear and really well articulated within the story, that likely means that your book is really well polished and ready to be sent into the query trenches. On the flip side, let's run through 6 signs that your book isn't ready to query yet. Number 1, you haven't gotten any feedback. If you feel like your book is perfect and fantastic and ready to query, but you haven't gotten any feedback, you probably don't want to start querying yet. Typically, unless you get a revise and resubmit, you have 1 chance per agent per book. And you don't want to waste that by sending your manuscript to an agent and having them reject it because you haven't gotten any feedback. When, if you had taken the time to get outside feedback, you could have polished the book, fixed any problems that this agent may be picking up on, and maybe actually had a shot. Getting a range of feedback from different people is such an important part of editing and polishing a manuscript. So if you haven't gotten any feedback and you're planning to query in the near future, that should be your next step. Sign number 2, you struggle to write a summary or pitch. Now yes, pitches and summaries can be quite challenging to write and a lot of writers do struggle with them. But personally, I think that if your book is really well developed and really well conceptualized and you've put in the editing, it shouldn't be that hard to write a summary or pitch, because you'll have a really deep understanding of the book's themes and message and purpose. And because if a book has all its core elements of conflict, if your characters have goals and there's lots of stakes and there's tension and there's an inciting incident and everything is working towards an interesting conclusion, the summary should kind of write itself because all the pieces are there. But if you're trying to write a pitch or a summary and you don't know how to explain your book, it might be because your book is lacking some key elements or because you haven't quite figured out its themes or message yet. Personally, I think that being able to write a pitch with ease is a great sign that you have a clear understanding of your story and all its elements of conflict are in place. But at the same time, if you're really struggling to write a pitch and you don't know how to explain your book, it may be because the book just needs more editing to help you clarify your vision. Sign number 3, building off that, you can't explain the theme, main idea of your book, or your main character's goal. If someone asks you what your main character's goal is and you can't explain it, or they ask you what the theme of your book is and you don't know, or they ask you what the main idea of your book is, what it's exploring, and you can't just explain what your book is in general in a sentence or 2, it likely needs more work. These are important elements of a polished and engaging story. If you can't explain them, if you don't know the answer to these things, then these things probably aren't present in the book quite yet. There probably isn't a unified theme or purpose to the story. Your main character probably doesn't have a clear goal that is propelling the story. Your story probably doesn't have cohesive ideas because there's still excess fluff in the story and you haven't figured that out yet. Being unable to explain your work simply and clearly is often an indicator that you don't know the answers, and if you don't know the answers, they likely aren't present in the story yet. Sign number 4, you haven't done a detailed line edit. It's possible that while doing revisions, you focus the bulk of your energy in refining the story. You've done a lot of work on pacing and structure, you've fleshed out your characters, and you feel like the book is ready to go. But without a detailed line edit, I can pretty much tell you your book is not ready to query. Not only does detailed line editing, and probably several rounds of detailed line editing, make the book smoother and easier to read, it shows your craft, it enhances your voice, but it also does enhance the story aspects, those plot character aspects of your story, by streamlining the word choice and making the story easier to digest. It helps you communicate the story elements more clearly. It will help you get closer to your book being within that target word count if you are over the word count or even if you are under the word count. And quite frankly, if you have a sloppy line, that's going to be an immediate turnoff for an agent. Doing detailed line edits to voice is a lot of work, And with how overworked and how busy a lot of publishing professionals are, they probably aren't going to take you on if they feel like you just haven't developed your voice strongly enough. So do detailed line edits in your book so it reads really smoothly, so it's polished, and so your voice really sings. This way, when an agent reads a sample of your work, they're going to immediately see that you have a developed, clear, strong voice that stands out. And that's what you want, is to stand out from all the other queries and all the other writing samples. That's not going to happen if the writing is muddy and muddled and hasn't been well line edited. Sign number 5, the book is way longer or way shorter than it needs to be for the genre. Building off what I said in the first half of the video, if your book is way outside the word count, then you may need to rethink the form your story is taking, or you need to do a lot more editing. If your book is way longer than the word count, potentially it needs to be split into multiple books. If it's way shorter, perhaps it's meant to be a novella or a short story. Or if it's way below or above the word count, maybe you just need a lot more editing. Maybe the story isn't fleshed out enough, or maybe it's way too bulky with excess scenes or plot lines, or hasn't been thoroughly line edited. While there are certainly exceptions to the rule, there certainly are books that exist far outside industry standard word counts. In a lot of cases, it is a sign that the book is overdeveloped, underdeveloped, or not in its optimal form yet. No matter what the reason is for your book being above or below word count, especially if it's drastic, it will likely be a turnoff to agents. So even if you feel you have a good reason, that doesn't necessarily mean that an agent will automatically give you a pass. Keep in mind that being outside these standards makes your book harder to sell, and that might be a concern for an agent. So if you're way outside the word count, then do some thinking, do some editing, but I wouldn't start querying quite yet. Finally, sign number 6, you just know there's more work to do. If just your gut intuition is telling you that you haven't done everything that you need to do, that there's more work to do on the manuscript, then you should listen to that. If part of you is saying, maybe I should just do one more draft, then you should probably just do that one more draft. Listen to your intuition. If your intuition is telling you that the book is not ready, but you want to go forward with querying, ask yourself if it's just because you're rushing it. If maybe you're getting a little impatient, that's so natural. It's really natural to want to rush to the next stage of publication because we want instant gratification and it's really exciting. The more polished your book is, the more likely that you will be able to land an agent. So if you're asking yourself, if you're not sure if you should do more edits, or you deep down know that you should do more edits, I would definitely do those edits rather than going forward with attempting to publish a book that just isn't ready yet. You will feel better about it if you're querying a book that you have complete confidence in and you know you've put the work into. So those are 6 signs your book is ready to query and 6 signs that it needs a little more work. So thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos from us. We've got new writing, editing, and publishing tips every Tuesday and Friday. Until next time, bye.